So today we're going to talk about closing your books for the end of the year. A lot of people hear that term and get stressed. Their fiscal years from January to December, so they start doing closing of books the 1st of January for the previous year. But honestly, it depends on your business. When we talk about closing your books, it's important for your company, but also to make sure that your books are in order for closing them, but also so you know where you stand at the end of the year. It gives you data so you can make good decisions in the new year. So let's just take an example. One of the most important things is making sure that all your accounts have their transactions categorized. Like here, I'm just going to show a basic example just for this specific account, but when you're closing your books, you're going to want all of this categorized to make sure that when you pull your reports, you can see how I do that in another video. But let's, for example, say this. You match this. So when you end up matching this, it'll show that no more transactions are taken care of. So after you do that for all these accounts, making sure that they're all categorized, then you can also pull your reports. So then you can test it out and play around with it. You want to show that your accounts are categorized. So you'll want the green check mark to show there's nothing that needs to be categorized at the end of the year. Next thing we need to talk about is where to go to close out your books for the year. You'll go to the gear icon and then account settings. You'll navigate to advanced. You identify the year you want it to end and when it starts and what accounting method you want. For some, they use cash basis, for some accrual. It just kind of depends. And if you want to close the books, you go to edit. When you first open it up, you'll just toggle this. Once you toggle that item, it'll do the closing date. You can enter the closing date, and then you can put certain restrictions on this. Like if you are having multiple people do this, you can select the permissions. If it's just you doing it, I usually allow changes after viewing a warning to know that if you are going back to make any changes to your previous year, you're at least notified. I mean, you know it, but maybe you don't realize you're making those changes. That has happened before, but this way you at least are aware of it. There's a couple other different permissions. So it allows you to make changes with just a warning, or you can actually put a password. Like if you have some employees that are doing this accounting, then you can set that and select that to make an actual password. So then you have to enter that to make changes. Once you close out your books, you don't want to make any more changes. It's important that once you finish categorizing and reconciling your accounts, you'll want to make sure all your accounts are categorized and reconciled. Then you'll move to your reports and use your bank statements to double check and make sure they match the amount at the end of the year. If they don't, you need to go back and see where a transaction might have been missed. Usually when you reconcile through QuickBooks, it catches everything for you, but maybe the previous year you weren't as thorough and so your amount was off the previous year. So if that happens, you have to do some adjustments for the beginning of the year. For example, let's say you're doing 2025 this year and you entered in checks for 2024. They were processed in 2024 in your QuickBooks, but they weren't actually processed in your statement until 2025. And the reason I give this as an example, I just had a client that had this. You have to account for that discrepancy to make sure that your account information matches what is on your statement, because that affects your balance sheet, and your balance sheet and your profit and loss are what are used for not just decision making, but also for your taxes. So it's important to be aware of these little nuances. When you close your books, you're going to see if there's any undeposited funds or your accounts receivable or your accounts payables are off. You can also catch if there's any invoices that haven't been paid yet, so you can reach out to clients about that. So closing your books is extremely important, not just for you having the knowledge you need to further your business, but it also catches all these small things that you would have to pay a bookkeeper to do cleanup on. So if you're doing this yourself, or just so you know the process too, doesn't hurt when you're working with your bookkeeper. If you're wanting to see where your books are at, check out my scorecard. I left the link below.